is about to crash! We all gonna die!
Everyone, calm down. We will land safely, I promise. No one will die.
Before we get into today's incredible story, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Viewers in the United States of America, let me see you hit the subscribe button. Then everyone watching from Africa, Europe, Asia, South America, and the rest of the world, represent your country below. Your comments help this channel grow, and I love seeing our global family connect. The airplane shook like a giant was shaking it. Alarm screamed. The pilot couldn't see straight. His hands were sweating. The co-pilot held his stomach, feeling so sick he could barely sit up. "Is there a pilot on this plane?" The flight attendant's voice cracked over the speaker. "We need help now." A calm voice answered. "This is Sarah Chun. Let me into the cockpit. Right now." But 3 hours ago, that same flight attendant had laughed at Sarah. She had treated her like she didn't belong there. Let me tell you how it all started. Sarah Chun walked through Chicago's big, busy airport. She was 42 years old and walked like a soldier, straight and strong. She wore a nice blue jacket and a white shirt. On her wrist was an old pilot's watch that had belonged to her grandfather. At the gate for Flight 229 to San Francisco, Sarah handed her ticket to the woman at the desk. "First class, seat 3B, Sarah said quietly. The desk woman looked at Sarah's ticket. Then she looked at Sarah's face. She paused just a little too long. Her smile seemed fake. "Of course, ma'am," she finally said. A man in an expensive suit named Mark Davidson saw this. He was 40 years old and thought he was very important. He pulled out his phone and started taking pictures. Inside the airplane, the flight attendant was named Lisa Martinez. She was 30 years old with blonde hair and a big, perfect smile. When Sarah walked to her first-class seat, Lisa's smile got a little smaller. Sarah sat down in seat 3B. She pulled out a big folder full of airplane papers, the kind that only pilots read. She studied them carefully. An old woman named Mrs. Ruth Washington sat in seat 3A. She was 70 years old and very smart. She noticed everything. She saw how people looked at Sarah. It made her sad. Mark sat in seat 3C. He whispered to Lisa, "I paid a lot of money for first class. I expect, the right kind of people up here." Lisa understood what he meant. She started watching Sarah more carefully. When Sarah asked for water instead of the fancy champagne, Mark rolled his eyes. When Sarah said no to the expensive nuts, Mark whispered again, "See? She doesn't even know how to act in first class." What nobody knew was that Sarah was reading papers about the Boeing 777 airplane they were sitting in. She knew more about this plane than the pilots flying it. Sarah also noticed something strange. The captain's voice on the speaker sounded very tired, more tired than normal. The co-pilot sounded weak. Lisa looked a little pale. Sarah had been a soldier for 20 years. She knew what food poisoning looked like. And she knew the crew had all eaten the same meal 45 minutes ago. "Just a passenger," Lisa whispered to another flight attendant, looking at Sarah. "Some people don't know their place." Those words would come back to haunt her. When Sarah got up to use the bathroom, Lisa stopped her in the hallway. "Ma'am, there are bathrooms in the back of the plane," Lisa said with a fake sweet voice. "My seat is 3B. This is the right bathroom for my ticket," Sarah answered calmly. "We try to keep certain standards for our premium passengers," Lisa said, like she was being nice but really wasn't. Mark's voice came from his seat. "Finally, someone's keeping order up here." Other passengers looked away. They knew this was wrong, but nobody said anything. Sarah stayed calm. Her military training taught her patience. But inside, she was watching the crew carefully. Lisa stumbled a little. The captain's last announcement had slurred words. The clock was ticking. Something bad was about to happen. Mark took more pictures of Sarah and posted them online. When airlines let anybody sit anywhere, standards matter. #first-class problems. His 15,000 followers started commenting. Some comments were mean. Some were racist. Sarah saw the phone but said nothing. She just checked her grandfather's watch habit when she felt stressed. Mrs. Washington caught Sarah's eye and smiled apologetically. Sarah nodded back. The plane took off into the sky. Nobody knew that Sarah Chen's 20 years as an Air Force pilot, her combat missions, and her test pilot training were about to save all their lives. The woman they thought didn't belong was about to become their only hope. 45 minutes into flight, the captain's voice came on the speaker. He sounded strange. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're having some small problems. Please stay in your seats." Sarah's head snapped up. She knew that voice. The captain was sick. Lisa grabbed a counter to stay standing. Her face was green. Sweat dripped down her forehead, even though the plane was cold. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked, standing up. "I'm fine. Sit down and mind your business." Lisa snapped back, but Sarah's trained eyes saw everything. Lisa's hands shook. She was breathing funny. She kept holding on to things to stay up. "When did you eat? What did you eat?" Sarah asked quickly. "Why do you care?" Lisa said, but her voice was weaker now. "Because I think you have food poisoning," Sarah said quietly. "And if you ate the same food as the pilots." Lisa's eyes got big. She understood. The crew meal. They all ate it. 45 minutes ago. Mark jumped up from his seat. "Where do you think you're going? Sit down and stop causing trouble." Sarah turned to face him. Something in her face had changed. She wasn't a quiet passenger anymore. "Sir, step aside. Now." Her voice was like a commander's voice. "Who do you think you are? Some kind of expert?" Mark's voice was loud but shaky. Sarah reached into her purse and pulled out a black leather wallet. Mark saw military wings badges and words that said United States Air Force and Lieutenant Colonel. "Actually, yes, I am an expert," Sarah said calmly. 20 years in the Air Force. Test pilot. For 1,000 flight hours. Mrs. Washington heard this from her seat. "Oh my God," she whispered. Mark's mouth opened, but no words came out. His face turned red. That has to be fake," he stammered. "I can show you more proof if you want," Sarah said. "But right now, I'm worried about your pilots." From the cockpit came a terrible sound. Someone was throwing up. Someone else was moaning. Sarah walked to the cockpit door and knocked hard. "Captain, this is Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Chun, Air Force retired. Are you having medical problems?" A weak voice answered. "Who? How did you? We need help." "Sir, I believe you and your crew have food poisoning. I need to check if you can still fly this plane." The co-pilot's voice came over the speaker, shaking with fear. "We need medical help now. Is there a doctor on board?" The whole cabin went silent. Mark backed away from Sarah. His face was white. Mrs. Washington looked at Sarah with new eyes, respect mixed with worry. Lisa grabbed Sarah's arm to keep from falling. I'm sorry about before. I didn't know." Sarah held Lisa steady. "We'll talk later. Right now, I need to know about the crew." Sarah opened the cockpit door. Both pilots looked terrible. The captain was slumped over, sweat all over his face. He couldn't even read the instruments. The co-pilot held his stomach, fighting not to throw up again. "Captain, what's your heading and altitude?" Sarah asked, sliding into the extra cockpit seat, like she'd done it 1,000 times. 270, I think, the captain said weakly. "Can't focus." Sarah's eyes flew over all the controls. "You're off course by 12 degrees. Autopilot is fixing it, but there's a huge storm ahead. You need to fly manually." She pointed at the weather radar. It showed angry red and yellow colors, a massive storm. "Are you really qualified to fly a 777? The co-pilot asked. "I've flown bigger planes in worse conditions," Sarah answered. Her hands were already moving over the controls like she knew every button by heart. Sarah pressed the intercom button. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Chun. Our flight crew is sick, but everything is under control. I'm qualified to help fly this plane and keep you safe." Mark's voice in the cabin. "This is crazy. You can't just take over a plane." Sarah came out of the cockpit. She wasn't patient anymore. She was a commander. "Sit down. Now." Her voice made Mark freeze. Mrs. Washington turned to Mark. "Sit down, you fool. She's trying to save us." Sarah went back to the cockpit. The captain was trying to stay awake. "Colonel Chin, what are our options?" he asked. Sarah looked at all the screens at once. "We have enough fuel. 287 passengers. But that storm is 200 miles wide with bad turbulence at every height." The captain stared at her. "How did you learn all that so fast?" "Military training. I can read emergency situations quickly." Sarah's hands adjusted the controls. "I recommend we go around the storm using military navigation." The co-pilot looked at her plan on the screen. That's exactly right. But it's really hard to do." Sarah pressed the radio button. "Los Angeles Control, this is United Flight 229. We have a crew medical emergency. We have a qualified military pilot helping." "Flight 229, confirm you have a qualified pilot aboard?" The controller sounded suspicious. "Yes. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Chun, Air Force retired, test pilot qualified, current on Boeing systems." There was a pause. "Copy that, 229. Back in the cabin, Mark was still filming with his phone. His followers were watching live. But now the comments were changing. People were realizing something amazing was happening. Jessica moved through the cabin, even though she felt sick. "Everyone, I need to tell you something. I was wrong about Colonel Chun. She IS qualified. She might be our only chance." Then the captain fell unconscious. His head dropped forward. Sarah checked him quickly, then made an announcement that made everyone's heart stop. "Ladies and gentlemen, the captain is now unconscious. The co-pilot is very sick. I'm taking control of the plane under emergency rules." People gasped. Some started crying. Sarah's voice stayed calm. "I'm being honest with you. This is serious. But I am fully qualified to land this plane safely." The woman they had laughed at was now their only hope for survival. The robot voice screamed through the cockpit. Sarah's trained eyes scanned the instruments. They were falling faster than the screen showed. The storm was pushing them down toward the Rocky Mountains. "I need you awake." Sarah told the co-pilot firmly, "What's our real altitude?" The co-pilot fought through his sickness to look at the instruments. 23,000 feet, but the readings are jumping everywhere. Sarah checked 3 different systems at lightning speed. "We're dropping twice as fast as the instruments say. The storm is pushing us down like a giant hand." She grabbed the radio. "Los Angeles Control, United 229 declaring emergency. We need a new route now. 229, nearest airport is Denver, 180 miles away." Sarah did the math in her head while watching their fuel. "Negative. Control. We can't make Denver. We're burning fuel too fast fighting the storm." The truth was scary. They couldn't go around the storm. The mountains were 14,000 feet high right in front of them. The storm was 200 miles in every direction. "We can't go around it," the co-pilot asked, understanding how bad this was. "Not with our fuel and all these passengers. We go through it." Sarah pressed the intercom. Her voice was steady even though inside she was scared. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're in severe weather. Everyone get in crash position for the next 30 minutes. Mrs. Washington gripped her armrest but told the scared passengers around her, "If anyone can save us, she can." Sarah closed her eyes for 3 seconds, a trick combat pilots used to reset their minds. In Afghanistan, she'd flown damaged helicopters through mountains while people shot at her. This storm was just as dangerous, but now she had 287 innocent lives depending on her. "I'm going to use terrain following navigation," Sarah told the co-pilot. "It's a military technique not normal for passenger planes." "Terrain following?" The co-pilot looked terrified. "That's strictly military. In combat, we fly low through mountains to avoid radar. Same rules work here. Stay below the bad winds, but above the mountain peaks." Sarah started dropping the plane lower. Passengers felt a fast descent. Their ears popped. Some people screamed. Mark, no longer arrogant, called out, "She knows what she's doing. Trust her." Through the windows, mountain peaks appeared and disappeared in the storm clouds. They looked so close. Sarah flew using only GPS and radar, flying blind through conditions that would scare any pilot. "Call out our position every 30 seconds, Sarah ordered. 2.3 miles north of Pikes Peak. Altitude 18,200. Good. Next, we thread the needle between Mount Evans and Mount Bierstadt. Suddenly, more alarms screamed. Wind shear. Wind chill. Full power. Sarah commanded. We're caught in a downdraft, but I'm going to use it. Use it. The co-pilot looked at her like she was crazy. Combat technique. Dive into the downdraft, build speed, then pull up hard when we hit the updraft on the other side. It's physics. Sarah dove the plane deeper into the storm. Passengers screamed as they felt weightless. The plane was falling toward the mountains. Her voice on the intercom stayed impossibly calm. What you're feeling is intentional. Stay seated. At the exact moment when crashing seemed certain, Sarah pulled back hard on the controls. The plane shot upward. Everyone was pressed into their seats. They cleared a mountain peak by only 300 feet. The co-pilot stayed at the screen in amazement. How did you know that would work? Because I've done it with missiles chasing me. Physics doesn't change based on what's trying to kill you. But then came worse news. We have a serious fuel problem. We're burning 20% more than calculated. Sarah checked the gauges. The numbers told a terrible story. How much reserve? 20 minutes instead of 4 to 5. We get ONE chance to land. No second tries. Sarah pressed the radio. Los Angeles Control. United 229 declaring fuel emergency. We need immediate clearance. Direct approach. No delays. 229. You're cleared for emergency approach. Runway 24 left. Emergency vehicles ready. Sarah looked at her grandfather's watch one last time. Grandpa, I need all your skills right now. She thought about every passenger behind her. Mrs. Washington, who knew her grandfather. Lisa, who learned about prejudice. Even Mark, who faced his own mistakes. Their lives depended on her making a perfect landing in impossible conditions. We're getting reports of severe wind shear on final approach. The co-pilot said grimly. How severe? So bad that control says planes should wait for better weather. Sarah checked the fuel gauges. The numbers were dropping toward zero. We can't wait. We land now or we don't land at all. At 500 feet above ground, wind shear hit Flight 229 like an invisible wall, pushing them sideways toward disaster. Sarah fought the controls with strength built from years of handling damaged planes in combat. Come on, sweetheart, stay with me, she whispered to the plane. At 200 feet, a downdraft tried to slam them into the ground. Passengers screamed, certain they were about to die. Sarah calmly added power and adjusted the plane with precision that turned near disaster into controlled flight. Not today. We're all going home. The wheels touched the runway. Safe. Perfect. Flight 229 rolled to a stop as emergency vehicles raced alongside. Applause exploded through the cabin. Passengers cried with relief and gratitude. Sarah slumped in the pilot seat, exhausted but victorious. That was the most incredible flying I've ever seen, the co-pilot told her in awe. Sarah checked her grandfather's watch one last time. Just doing the job. But she knew the truth. She'd just done one of the hardest emergency landings in history. Mrs. Washington stopped Sarah at the plane door, tears streaming down. My husband worked with your grandfather. He would be so proud. Lisa approached, still sick but determined. I'm so sorry for how I treated you. I was wrong. Sarah's response showed her grace. We all make mistakes. What matters is learning from them. Mark approached last, struggling to find words. I don't know how to apologize for what I said online about you. Sarah looked at him with compassion. Fear makes people say things. What matters is learning from it. But you weren't afraid, Mark said. I was terrified, Sarah admitted honestly. But I had a responsibility. Within hours, Mark's deleted posts came back through screenshots. The contrast between his prejudice and Sarah's heroism went viral worldwide. Millions of people saw it. The news discovered Sarah's full story. Congressional Medal of Honor recipient. 47 combat missions. 12 emergency landings under enemy fire. Youngest woman ever selected for NASA's astronaut program, where she turned down to serve her country after September 11th. The woman they thought didn't belong in first class had turned down seats on spaceships to serve in combat. 6 months later, Sarah agreed to one interview. Holding her grandfather's watch, she said, "My grandfather taught me that character isn't about how we treat important people. It's about how we treat people we think are unimportant." She looked directly at the camera. "Every day you meet people whose stories you don't know. The person serving your coffee might be a veteran. The woman in the wrong seat might be the person who saved your life. Respect isn't earned through status. It's owed through humanity. Look around you. Really see people. Respect their dignity. Not because of what they might do for you, but because they deserve it as human beings." Sarah held up her grandfather's watch. This watch has seen combat zones, test flights, and emergency landings. But its most important job has always been reminding me that time is precious, and so is every person we share it with. If this story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that subscribe button right now for Stories That Save, where we share true stories of hidden heroes who change everything. Comment below, have you ever misjudged someone? Or has someone surprised you with unexpected heroism? Share your story. Share this with someone who needs to remember that heroes don't always look like we expect. They sit quietly in seat 3B, waiting for the moment when their service matters most. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story that could change how you see the world. Remember, sometimes the most extraordinary people hide in the most ordinary moments. Keep your eyes open. You never know when you'll meet a hero. Subscribe to Stories That Save and join a community that celebrates respect, dignity, and the hidden heroes among us.